This is one of Star Rail's most insane characters, and today I'm going to show you how to build them. March is both one of the first and best characters that Star Rail has to offer. If her wit, charm, and kind of sad backstory didn't sell you on her already, they gave her everything in the game to persuade you otherwise. Counters, freezing, shielding, cleansing, healing. This character is literally everything in the game. Alongside Sushang and Tingyun, she is also one of 3 characters that you can receive Eidolons for should you decide to pull for Jingyuan. But of course, none of that matters. Let's get into it. If it weren't clear from my previous gushing about how good she is, March is the definition of the word flexible. With this being the case, she can be played in any team composition as a utility, a tank, an enabler, you name it. In her best case scenarios, March shines as a way to force enemies to hit a certain unit while fishing for freezes with their ultimate. Additionally, her skill can be used as a panic button to cleanse and bury your allies, or as a way to ensure that a certain unit is being targeted. When taken alongside other preservation units, maintaining a balance of her shield uptime and skill point consumption is key. Shielding is extremely important for keeping your tanks and healers alive, especially in memory chaos, but overdo it and you won't have enough skill points to use your other character's skills as well. Learning to count how many skill points you'll have ahead of time is another very important skill in honkaistarrail and will prevent you from tragedies like being unable to use your heal. So long story short, use your skill responsibly when you need healing or shielding, you need to redirect aggression, or need to cleanse. Your ultimate is also spammable at any time unless you specifically want to time it before a boss casts a major skill. March's Lightcone situation is actually one of the more interesting discussions in honkaistarrail. Unlike most other characters, her best Lightcone is not a 5-star or simply pay to win gacha. The defense scaling Lightcones like This Is Me, Day 1 of My New Life, and Trend of the Universal Market are all solid options for March given her already built-in defense scaling and a pesky flaw within March's identity. That is, of course, the fact that she is a preservation character who doesn't want to take aggro but rather redirect it with her skill. Since this is the case, Lightcones like Landau's Choice or Moment of Victory that increase the likelihood of being targeted are off limits, especially if you want to pair March with other preservation characters or Clara. But among all the 4-star Lightcones, Day 1 of My New Life is actually the most ideal since the increased damage resistance for all allies, in addition to the increased defense, adds the most overall value. This Is Me, however, is a close runner-up should the others be unavailable since it is obtainable through the Nameless Glory. I do want to make a special shout out to Amber since it does provide a good amount of defense even as a measly 3-star and can definitely be worthwhile investing in if you don't want to use your Nameless Glory Lightcone on This Is Me. March 7th at her core is a support character, which means one very important thing. That's right, she doesn't need to be maxed on traces if you can help it. Although every character in the game ideally wants to have their traces maxed, March only needs a few key traces upgraded in order to function best. The first and most important relative to her usability is the cleanse that you gain as a major trace. The others are valuable later when it comes to squeezing out every last ounce of tankiness and utility in her kit, but none is nearly as important as the unique feature provided by now becoming a cleanser. Unlocking the other major traces for March is nice, obviously, since an extra turn on shield and increased chance of freeze can be clutch. However, if you need to upgrade other characters or farm for your main DPS's traces, prioritize that instead. Assuming you have enough resources to upgrade as you please though, focus on upgrading her skill and ultimate levels followed by any defense traces on the way there. As I mentioned before though, her role first and foremost is utility/support. If you wanted to make her a DPS and focus on damage, she really doesn't do that much outside of breaking an enemy weak to ice, so I would hold off on those ideas for now. It also doesn't help that you miss out on the insane value she has as either a freezer or a supported buffer should you decide to opt into damage. So unlock cleanse, upgrade skill and ultimate, the rest is extra. This is around the 4th, 5th, maybe 6th guide I've done by this point regarding relics, so here's a quick rundown if you aren't familiar. First off, since honkaistarrail is limited by the amount of energy you're able to use every day, it is really important to decide what's worth farming for. For support characters like March, going out of your way to farm a perfect set is luxury, not a necessity. With this in mind, if you're looking to min-max how much energy you spend on relics so that you can afford to farm for traces and level up materials, your best bet is to farm out a usable set of musketeer gear that can be multi-use across your various buffers, debuffers, etc. Since the musketeer set overlaps in usefulness with characters like Tingyun or general DPS who need attack and speed, this is a perfect set of gear to farm. In closing, worthwhile for anyone who values their energy being used on other farms. With that out of the way, however, let's talk about March's ideal set. March's best in slot relic set is Knight of Purity Palace with 2 potential planetary sets being equally usable. Belobog of the Architects or the defense-based planetary set allows for an even larger shield and added stat to her already defense scaling kit. This set is great for team compositions that focus primarily on survivability and keeping everyone healthy. By making shields larger and keeping March healthier, she's able to mitigate even more than before. plain and simple. Her equally as viable set is Fleet of the Ageless. This planetary set needs no introduction as it is extremely valuable to any team that has a damage dealer. In addition to the team-wide 8% attack buff, an extra 12% max HP really puts the set over the edge in terms of value. In team compositions with hyper carries like Sela or Jingyuan, or when you are taking 2 DPS as opposed to 1 in a team, this set really shines. Moving past the sets, a really important decision you have to make, especially once you start considering main stats, is what kind of March 7th you're looking to build. The body for March will always remain effect hit rate since you're looking to land the ultimate freeze. The boot will also stay speed since that stat is king in Star Rail, and the planar sphere only makes sense as defense percent. But there is a bit of a toss-up when it comes to the Link Rope's main stat. March does gain great value from an energy regen rope when you're looking to spam her ultimate. However, if the size of the shield she provides is more important, March is better with the defense percent Link Rope. The problem with debating between the two is that there are definitely situations where one is better than the other, but neither always better at all times. So what that means is that you can choose whichever you get first or whichever helps your account more. In regards to substat priority, March is slightly different from other supported buffers since she needs effect hit rate to land her freeze. However, in general, she desires defense percent, speed, and enough effect hit rate to debuff enemies before looking for any additional HP percent. This is pretty standard. She wants to survive and scales with defense when it comes to her shield, so defensive leaning substats will definitely take priority over anything else, especially once she's able to consistently land the freeze. Just as a final note on this section, it may seem tempting, but please don't use an ice damage planar sphere. Seriously, it doesn't do anything. On the topic of Eidolons, Marches are both easier to get and great too. Given she is one of the free characters we initially receive while also being a 4-star, reaching higher Eidolons on her is definitely more reasonable. And starting us off at number 1, March gains energy when she freezes a target with her ultimate. Now to be clear, this is 6 energy per target that she freezes, so if you manage to freeze 5 targets, you gain a quarter of her ultimate cost back. This is pretty unlikely though, since even at max she only has a 65% chance to freeze per target. Still, this is free energy and adds up over the course of a long fight. Great Eidolon. Her second Eidolon is equally as good as the first since it provides a free shield to your DPS or low health ally who could risk being wiped out. This might not seem like much, but in certain scenarios where enemies are guaranteed to take the turn before you and attack, the shield could be the difference between life or death. In addition, it's always nice to have a free barrier from the get-go so that you can focus on shielding others while saving a skill point in the process. Moving toward the top of the Eidolon list, March's 3rd and 5th Eidolons are nice as increases to shield value and somewhat decent damage that you gain on ultimate. The 4th Eidolon is decent for when March can apply weakness break to an enemy, but the counter damage itself is still not high enough to even begin competing with dedicated damage dealers. So while the damage itself may add up over a long extended fight, you'll see the most value from the weakness break specifically. However, March's 6th Eidolon is where the real insanity with the added healing to her skill begins. Although it doesn't seem like much, the continuous heal across several turns and targets really does add up, especially when taking on harder content like Memory Chaos. This, in combination with the already decently sized shield you gain from March's skill, really starts to build the overall sustainability and tankiness of March's team. So if you are able to snag E6 March while pulling for Jingyuan, you'll be pleased to know that there is great value in getting copies. March doesn't struggle in the slightest when it comes to fitting into team compositions, and for good reason. Since she slots into being a buffer, debuffer, healer, cleanser, and pseudo tank, free-to-play and whales alike can use her to great effect. To use her with free-to-play teams, look no further than the traditional Natasha, Fire Trailblazer, March, and your choice of DPS composition. This team has tankiness, 2 cleanses, 2 healers, and provides decent protection to all allies. Both Natasha and March serve as shielders and healers while also doubling as emergency panic buttons if the situation calls for it. In later Memory Chaos floors, a team with this much utility and flexibility makes content much easier to clear since it is harder to be overwhelmed by debuffs or go several turns without access to a heal in this composition. If her flexibility wasn't enough of a reason to take her, pairing March with the Fire Trailblazer allows for endless debuffs and redirection of aggro. When using Landau's Choice or Japard's Lightcone, the Trailblazer is especially likely to be hit after gaining March's shield. Now add in a potential DPS like Dan Heng's Major Trace that decreases his chances of being hit, and suddenly it is much easier to manipulate enemies and prevent your DPS from dying. Of course, you can still be hit by certain area of effect attacks, but this is nonetheless a great addition to the already long list of pros in bringing March on a team. If we move to the unrestricted most ideal team compositions that include March, 2 come to mind. The first is a Protect the Clara composition that includes March, Clara, Tingyun, and your choice of Natasha or Bailu depending on if you need more cleanses or heals. This team allows for Clara to be hit as many times as possible while also maintaining heals, barriers, and cleanses. Clara as a hyper carry counter DPS is extremely popular for clearing Memory Chaos at the moment, since she has a bleed that scales with max HP. Pair this with March, who has the ability to increase the likelihood of being targeted with their shield, and voila, you have a match made in heaven. So Protected Clara has immense value as the focus of a counter composition featuring March, but that isn't the only usage March has as a utility. The second team features March as a freeze and emergency button to facilitate an ice comp featuring Yanqing and Japard. The idea behind this trio is the ability to prevent Yanqing from taking damage and subsequently allow Soul Steel Sync to remain active. Soul Steel Sync provides crit rate, crit damage, and decreases the likelihood of Yanqing from being targeted, so maintaining uptime is vital. March and Japard both do well in complementing Yanqing since they both provide shields to prevent him from taking damage, in addition to having a freeze within the other parts of their kit. In Japard's case, this is his skill, whereas March has her ultimate's freeze. Any amount of continuous action blocking or turn taking prevention is great so that Yanqing can wreak havoc and fish for freezes all while doing big damage. The fourth slot in this team composition, as always, is flexible depending on the floor or content you're encountering, but Pela, Bailu, and Natasha are the primary candidates. Pela is for when you are positive you don't need an additional cleanse or heal and need to clear content faster with the defense and ice resistance decrease. Natasha, of course, is ideal should you be looking for more cleanses with the side of healing, whereas Bailu shines if you're only looking for healing with a potential revive panic button. Well, that's pretty much everything you'd need to know about March, and honestly, it was pretty clear from the moment we saw her that her kit would be bonkers broken. There are plenty of great moments where you can bring March, and equally as many opportunities where she adds an additional level of protection or sustain that others simply cannot provide. Especially when you aren't utilizing a speed clear composition or pairing a team with Bronya and Tingyun, March has an absurd amount of value. However, that's all I've got for this March guide. I hope you guys all learned a thing or two. I know I'm already sold on the character, and she's already helped me clear a ton of memory chaos. But on a parting note, if you didn't know, I chat, theorycraft, and all that good jazz live on Twitch and in Discord. I also tweet out some of the horrors that happened to me while playing Honkai Star Rail, so be sure to follow on Twitter as well. If you enjoyed today's video though, guys, make sure to like, turn the notification bell, comment below what you think about March 7th, and subscribe. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you all in the next one.